One felt as if there was an enormous well behind them, filled up with ages of memory and long, slow, steady thinking. But their surface was sparkling with the present, like sun shimmering on the outer leaves of a vast tree, or on the ripples of a very deep lake. I don't know, but it felt as if something that grew in the ground, asleep you might say, or just feeling itself as something between root tip and leaf tip, between deep earth and sky, had suddenly waked up and was considering you with the same slow care that it had given to its own inside affairs for endless years. Hello everybody, welcome to Aude and Tulava, where we are walking our way through Tolkien's Legendarium looking for new insights and a greater understanding of the works we all love. Today we are starting chapter 4 of book 3, Treebeard. As we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, grab a version of the books you don't have in the description below, or join the channel membership community if you'd like to support the channel that way. We also partner with Chapter Tea and Coffee. Chapters springs from a passion for story. They set out to elevate the stories we all love by teaming up with independent artists to hand draw beautiful imagery and pair it with specially selected artisanal tea. My favorite, of course, is Second Breakfast. Go to drinkchapters.com/Huron and use code Huron15 to get 15% off. I do, of course, earn a small commission from every bag sold, so thank you in advance. It's a great way to sit down and enjoy the books we all love. That's drinkchapters.com/Huron and use code Huron15 to get 15% off. All right, let's dive in. We left off last chapter with Merry and Pippin turning from the battle between the Rohirrim and the orcs. They're not exactly well fed, but they had a chance to eat some of their lembas. They move as quickly as they can in the dense forest until their fear of the orcs dies away, and we catch up with them as they continue on. A queer stifling feeling came over them, as if the air were too thin or too scanty for breathing. At last, Merry halted. "We can't go on like this," he panted. "I want some air." "Let's have a drink at any rate," said Pippin. "I'm parched." He clambered on to a great tree root that wound down into the stream, and stooping, drew up some water in his cupped hands. It was clear and cold, and he took many draughts. Merry followed him. The water refreshed them and seemed to cheer their hearts. For a while they sat together on the brink of the stream, dabbling their sore feet and legs and peering round at the trees that stood silently about them, rank upon rank, until they faded away into gray twilight in every direction. As I'm reading this right now, I'm stuck with the similarities to the scene where the hobbits rested in the old forest outside of the Shire. No, they're not sleepy, but they go and, dab their feet in the stream, just like Frodo at the roots on the edge of the Withywindle. But there's a couple of I would say probably clear, stark differences. One, they feel stifled, but we never see them feeling in danger, at least from the forest anyway. And they're not sleepy, it's just dense and stuffy. The other thing we don't hear about is the trees, shifting and kind of, corralling the hobbits in the direction that they want them to go. The trees want them to go anyway. We saw a couple chapters ago that the trees may be able to move on their own when we see the tree bending over the fire. We get that hint, but we're not really seeing it super obviously here. So instead of us seeing the hobbits in danger due to an outside force or person, we're just seeing their danger be situational. They're in a bad spot, but luckily they have water and some food, but they're not in immediate danger from the orcs or Rohirrim or any sort of sentient being trying to search them out and kill them. So they can safely sit on the edge of the stream, bathing their feet in the cool waters without the readers having the fear of them being thrown in. They just get to look at the trees and see them kind of fade away off into the distance. Now, as Pippin wonders whether Merry has gotten them lost, he takes a minute to, reminisce a little bit about home. "Yes, it is all very dim and stuffy in here," said Pippin. "It reminds me somehow of the old room in the great place of the Tooks, away back in the Smiles at Tuckborough. A huge place where the furniture has never been moved or changed for generations. They say the old Took lived in it year after year, while he and the room got older and shabbier together, and it has never been changed since he died a century ago. And old Gerontius was my great-great-grandfather. That puts it back a bit. But that is nothing to the old feeling of this wood. Look at all those weeping, trailing beards and whiskers of lichen, and most of the trees seem to be half covered with ragged, dry leaves that have never fallen. Untidy. I can't imagine what spring would look like here if it ever comes, still less of spring cleaning." The first part of this section reminds me of Bilbo in The Hobbit. Bilbo is often looking back at Bag End and wishing he was there to, cook bacon and eggs or something. Side note, if you should really read Exploring the Hobbit by Corey Olsen. Talks about this a lot and it's a phenomenal book. But in contrast, Pippin here isn't wishing he was back in the Shire. As far as I can tell, he's doing what I do all the time. He's just verbally processing and kind of walking himself into understanding the current situation. But instead of simply wishing he were back in the Shire, he's just comparing Fangorn to places he's familiar with. He's bringing the two places together rather than emphasizing how different they are. And it seems to me like he's comforting himself with thoughts of home. But it's important to note that he's not wishing to be back home. Like I said, he's bringing the two together. He's not in denial of their situation. He doesn't wish he didn't come on the adventure. I would say it's either a surprisingly mature way to process their situation or an immature way to process it. He either understands the decisions he's made that have brought him here, all the while knowing those decisions could lead to great danger. Or he's just a young kid happy to be out on an adventure without realizing like how serious his situation is. I like the idea of him being mature right here. And even though he's thinking about home and drawing those comparisons, he's not wishing he was back. It's just comforting. As they sit and discuss their short food stores next to the stream, they finally get a glimpse of sunlight and decide to head on towards it. In the face of the stony wall, there was something like a stair, natural perhaps and made by the weathering and splitting of the rock, for it was rough and uneven. High up, almost level with the tops of forest trees, there was a shelf under a cliff. Nothing grew there but a few grasses and weeds at its edge, and one old stump of a tree with only 2 bent branches left. It looked almost like the figure of some gnarled old man standing there blinking in the morning light. "Up we go," said Mary joyfully, "now for a breath of fresh air and a sight of the land." Tolkien's coy wording here is really interesting. The stair is to be natural. Perhaps. I confess I don't really know what to make of this. We don't really have any evidence I know of that would tie Ents to like making the staircase themselves. They seem pretty, an au natural sort of people, if you will. But I love the part about the old stump. Of course, we know this is Treebeard, but we get our first sight of an Ent. And what do we see? They look so much like a tree, or at least what used to be a full flowering tree, that you wouldn't recognize one if you didn't know what you were looking for. And these are hobbits, fairly familiar with nature. I looked up the definition of blink, by the way, which kind of seems silly because blinking is what we do all the time. Our eyes close and open quickly to keep them from drying out. But they're clearly seeing a stump and not eyes like blinking in the sun. So why would he use the term blinking if it was just a stump? Like, it's not going to be like blinking super fast. Why would a dead stump make him think of an action like blinking? So I think he saw Treebeard blink a couple of times in the sun and it didn't click like with him, like Mary or Pippin, whoever's speaking here. I think his brain saw Treebeard blink. It just assumed it definitely didn't happen, so it only reminded him of an old man. Obviously, that's just kind of how I'm reading into it. I'd love to hear if you have a different theory or if it should like just be taken at face value. Leave a comment below. Let me know. Love to chat about it. But they're not like to the stump yet. They climbed and scrambled up the rock. If the stair had been made, it was for bigger feet and longer legs than theirs. They were too eager to be surprised at the remarkable way in which the cuts and sores of their captivity had healed and their vigor had returned. They came at length to the edge of the shelf, almost at the feet of the old stump. Then they sprang up and turned round with their backs to the hill, breathing deeply and looking out eastward. They saw that they had only come some 3 or 4 miles into the forest. The heads of the trees marched down the slopes towards the plain. There, near the fringe of the forest, tall spires of curling black smoke went up, wavering and floating towards them. "The wind's changing," said Mary. "It's turned east again. It feels cool up here." "Yes," said Pippin, "I'm afraid this is only a passing gleam, and it will go all gray again. What a pity. This shaggy old forest looks so different in the sunlight. I almost felt I liked the place." Here we get another hint at what the old stump is. The stairs are made for feet and legs larger than their own. Interesting. What I see as the more important part of this section is the mention of the magic. It's not stated quite as frankly, but it's there. We're getting some foreshadowing of what Gimli notices at Isengard. The hobbits' vigor had returned. Their cuts and sores were healed. Now, it's not crazy that their injuries healed, but I mean, this quickly is a little, questionable. In the Tale of Years in Appendix B, it states that the hobbits escape the orcs and meet Treebeard on the same day. So what's the variable here? I guess it could be the Lembas, but I think we could, would have heard something about that from the elves and Lorien or even Legolas when they gave it to them. So that leaves their interaction with the Entwash, where they got their drink and dabbled their feet. Personally, I think it's a combination of drinking and bathing their feet in it. Their general energy returned most likely because they drank it, but the wounds on their ankles were probably most helped by dabbling their feet in the water. Now, I couldn't find anything regarding legends of the Entwash and any powers it may or may not have. And later we hear the draughts of the Ents are powerful, but later in this chapter, we'll see they are most likely pretty different from just the waters of the stream. Their new vigor and vantage points give Pippin a whole new appreciation of the forest. He was pretty down on it for a while, but now he's, almost felt he liked it. Not even he almost liked it. He almost felt that he liked it. I know that's important, but I feel I lack the requisite grammar expertise to really explain why. If anyone would like to help me out with that, again, appreciate it. Leave a comment. Otherwise, we'll have to wait for Corey to get to this section in like a decade or two. But Pippin's admittance brings us a whole new type of character. Almost felt you liked the forest. That's good and uncommonly kind of you, said a strange voice. Turn round and let me have a look at your faces. I almost feel that I dislike you both, but do not let us be hasty. Turn around. A large knob-knuckled hand was laid on each of their shoulders, and they were twisted round gently but irresistibly. Then two great arms lifted them up. They found that they were looking at a most extraordinary face. It belonged to a large, man-like, almost troll-like figure, at least 14 foot high, very sturdy, with a tall head and hardly any neck. Whether it was clad in stuff like green and gray bark, or whether that was its hide, was difficult to say. At any rate, the arms at a short distance from the trunk were not wrinkled, but covered with a brown, smooth skin. The large feet had 7 toes each. The lower part of the long face was covered with a sweeping gray beard, bushy, almost twiggy at the roots, thin and mossy at the ends. But at the moment the hobbits noted little but the eyes. Those deep eyes were now surveying them, slow and solemn, but very penetrating. They were brown, shot with a green light. Often afterwards, Pippin tried to describe his first impression of them. So here we finally meet Treebeard, and pardon my terrible voice for him. And I love how he immediately gives the counterpoint to Pippin's point about almost liking the forest. Treebeard almost feels like he dislikes the hobbits. Luckily, they're saved by his mantra, don't be hasty. The description of Treebeard has always amazed me. It's evocative and really paints a picture of what the new creature is. And we get a very small glimpse into how strong he is. He turns the hobbits around irresistibly. We've probably all felt that in our lives, most likely when we were younger. A hand grips our shoulder and we can feel that we just have to turn around with that hand. We could try to resist, but it wouldn't do anything meaningful except like we'd hurt ourselves. So we turn, and of course, we have to listen to Pippin try and describe the eyes here. One felt as if there was an enormous well behind them, filled up with ages of memory and long, slow, steady thinking. But their surface was sparkling with the present, like sun shimmering on the outer leaves of a vast tree, or on the ripples of a very deep lake. I don't know, but it felt as if something that grew in the ground, asleep you might say, or just feeling itself as something between root tip and leaf tip, between deep earth and sky, had suddenly waked up and was considering you with the same slow care that it had given to its own inside affairs for endless years. Now, Pippin here gives us a great insight into Treebeard. I'm willing to bet his future experience with the Ent helped color how he remembers the first glimpse of the eyes, but it's still oddly insightful for, Pippin. He sees slow care given to the creature's own affairs for endless years. And endless is honestly pretty close. I don't know about you, I can almost see the eyes in my head. I can feel the slow care, the bright intellect, infinite patience, and inexorable will behind them. Every different little explanation is trying to tell us there's a deep well beneath the surface of the eyes. And as Treebeard tells us how he almost stepped on the hobbits, I feel now's a good time to mention who his voice is based on. Hammond and Skull's companion reminds us that Humphrey Carpenter let us know that the voice of Treebeard, his way of speaking, was modeled after Tolkien's good friend C.S. Lewis. You can get a glimpse of C.S. Lewis in this video here if you kind of want to get a better idea. I feel like we would get much more, like basso in his voice if we could use modern recording techniques, but oh well. Even though Treebeard was almost, threatening the hobbits with turning them into wine, we find Pippin not really particularly fussed about it. Pippin, though still amazed, no longer felt afraid. Under those eyes, he felt a curious suspense, but not fear. Please, he said, who are you and what are you? A queer look came into the old eyes, a kind of wariness. The deep wells were covered over. Now, answered the voice. Well, I am an Ent, or that's what they call me. Yes, Ent is the word. The Ent I am, you might say, in your manner of speaking. Fangorn is my name, according to some. Treebeard, others make it. Treebeard will do. I just did a quick search in the ebook and realized that other than Legolas, his mention of the Onodrim that men call Ents, this is the first mention of the word Ent, other than, the other first one. Rather apropos that it comes from Treebeard's mouth, at least in my opinion. Now, I do go over a bit what Ents are in that video, see here. In that video, I mostly lean on kind of where Tolkien got the word from and what it means. But in the Legendarium, where did the Ents actually come from? Well, in letter 247, Tolkien tells us, no one knew whence they Ents came or first appeared. The High Elves said that the Valar did not mention them in the music. But some, Galadriel, were of the opinion that when Yavanna discovered the mercy of Eru to Aule in the matter of the dwarves, she besought Eru through Manwë, asking him to give life to things made of living things, not stone. and that the Ents were either souls sent to inhabit trees, or else that slowly took the likeness of trees, owing to their inborn love of trees. Not all were good. The Ents thus had mastery over stone. The males were devoted to Orome, but the wives to Yavanna. The general story goes, once the dwarves were hallowed by Eru, Yavanna was mad that the dwarves would need wood for their fires. She petitioned Manwë, who was given a vision by Eru. Manwë goes back to Yavanna and he says, "Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also. And it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Olvar, and some will dwell therein, and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared." So we pair that passage from the Silmarillion and the letter from Tolkien, and we can assume some of those spirits that went into the Kelvar and Olvar, or flora and fauna, became Ents. And if Treebeard is the Ent, then he must have been the first to awaken. At least that'll be my assumption. That puts Treebeard at, I don't know, roughly 25,000 years old. That math could be weird too, because of how like Valinorian years are counted compared to years like Middle Earth and like Beleriand, but I mean, either way, he's like real old. As they continue their conversation, we get a new poem. Treebeard is trying to figure out where the hobbits fit into the old list. He learned like all about the different animals in Middle Earth. Learn now the lore of living creatures. First name the four, the free peoples. Eldest of all, the elf children. Dwarf the delver, dark are his houses. Ent the earthborn, old as mountains. Man the mortal, master of horses. Beaver the builder, buck the leaper. Bear be hunter, boar the fighter. Hound is hungry, hare's fearful. Eagle and eyrie, ox in pasture. Heart-horned crowned, hawk is swiftest. Swan the whitest, serpent coldest. Hum, how did it go? Room-tum, room-ti-tum-tum. Was a long list, but anyway, you do not seem to fit in it anywhere. We always seem to have got left out of the old list and the old stories, said Merry. Yet we've been about for quite a long time. We're hobbits. Why not make a new line, said Pippin. Half-grown hobbits, the hole dwellers. Far as I can tell, this is trochaic tetrameter, so 4 metrical feet like hobbit meter, but the stress is on the first syllable, so duh. Eldest of all, the elf children. It's not like a perfect meter, nor can I guarantee that I'm even correct. My first thought when I see 4 metrical feet is always iambic tetrameter, what Corey also calls hobbit meter. But as we see, the hobbits seem a little salty. They're always left off the old list, even though they like avoid big people, meaning, you know, elves and men. But they also showed up in the Second Age, it seems, so they wouldn't really be on the list that elves taught to the Ents some 20,000 years ago or so. Skipping forward just a touch, the hobbits tell Treebeard their names without hesitation and wonder why Treebeard won't tell them his full name. Here we learn Entish is a pretty ridiculous language and encourages patience to an, I don't know, I'd say kind of an absurd degree. We then hear Treebeard mention Gandalf, wondering what he's up to and what's going on. There's quite a lot going on, said Merry, and even if we tried to be quick, it would take a long time to tell. But you told us not to be hasty. Ought we to tell you anything so soon? Would you think it rude if we asked what you were going to do with us and which side you are on? And did you know Gandalf? Yes, I do know him, the only wizard that really cares about trees, said Treebeard. Do you know him? Yes, said Pippin sadly. We did. He was a great friend and he was our guide. Then I can answer your other questions, said Treebeard. I am not going to do anything with you. Not if you mean by that do something to you without your leave. We might do some things together. I don't know about sides. I got my own way, but your way may go along with mine for a while. But you speak of Master Gandalf as if he was in a story that had come to an end. Yes, we do, said Pippin sadly. The story seems to be going on, but I'm afraid Gandalf has fallen out of it. So we open up the wound again for the hobbits. Gandalf has fallen out of their story. Bit on the nose. Treebeard genuinely sounds like he does not know that Gandalf died in Moria, though I find this phrasing in his question a little ambiguous. The first states, what is Gandalf up to? That could be taken as a general question of where he is and what's going on with him. More like, I wonder what he's up to these days. Or one could take it meaning Treebeard has seen Gandalf, knows some of his actions, but is wondering to what end those actions are aimed. But I don't know which would be the correct one. It's possible we're seeing Tolkien hint that Gandalf is alive again and is in the region. It would match up with what the 3 hunters saw at their camp beside the forest in the last chapter. Though that is a couple days in the future, thank you to, Tolkien's interlacing. But as the hobbits say, even though they're hasty, the tale they have to tell will take a bit of time. Treebeard wisely decides to take them to one of his homes for the night so he can hear their story and provide them with some food. Oh, you need not trouble about that, said Treebeard. I can give you a drink that will keep you green and growing for a long, long while. And if we decide to part company, I can set you down outside my country at any point you choose. Let us go." And here is where we will end. The hobbits have found what seems to be a new friend, even though he thought about squishing them at first. He'll even provide them with travel if they decide they would like to leave. So it turns out, though they don't know exactly where they are no longer lost. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, buy a new version of the book you don't already have in the description, or join the channel membership. And don't forget to claim your 15% off Chapters Tea and Coffee. The book and these videos are best enjoyed with a lovely beverage on hand. Until next time, always remember, out into the valley, they shall come again.